In this mini video, I'm going to introduce you to a language called CSS, short for Cascading Style Sheets. So what's it all about? Well, first let's think back to IS216, where we built some of the ugliest websites known to humankind. We used HTML to structure things like lists, paragraphs, headers, images, forms, and so on and so on. We focused on structuring content, but we paid absolutely no attention to making it look good. So if HTML is used to describe how your content should be structured, then CSS is used to describe how it should be presented. This means it is used to describe matters of style, so things like the layout of the page, or the font size, or the colors that you want to use. So let us have a look at a little example. Here we have a rather plain HTML page, no styling at all. We're just structuring our content into a couple of different headers, as well as a bullet point list and a few paragraphs about some cheese-oriented opinions. Okay, so obviously we need to make this page a bit more stylistic if we want people to take these opinions seriously. So the first thing that I want to do is to make the header purple. So how do I do that in CSS? Well, it's pretty simple. I just write h1, which is the element, and color purple within some curly braces. In CSS terminology, this h1 here is an example of a selector. It's expressing which parts of the HTML document that this rule should be applied to. In this case, we're saying that we want it to apply to all h1 HTML elements. Color here is a property. It's what we want to style. And finally, purple is, of course, a value. I'm going to apply this CSS rule by adding it into an internal style sheet for the document. So this is done simply by adding a style element within the head element and typing up the CSS rule within that. So our h1 element is a beautiful purple now. If we want this rule to be applied to other elements, we can certainly do so by adding groups of selectors using commas, for example, h1, h2. In this case though, I'd rather my second level headers be blue, so I'm going to give them their own CSS rule. Notice how the styling is applied to both of the h2 elements in this page. The final thing I want to do is style up the paragraphs. I'd like to give the text in them a new font, and to do this I'm going to pop onto W3 Schools and have a look at what's available. Now, just in case a particular font isn't installed on one of your users' computers, it's very good practice not only to specify the fonts you actually want, but also a generic family that can be used as a fallback. So we have a few examples of these on this page, and I'm going to choose one that will really emphasize the seriousness of my cheese opinions. Beautiful. So all I'm going to do now is make sure that this styling is also applied to the bullet point list. And then finally, I'm going to muck around a little bit and align the text in the middle of the screen and make it italic. Of course, this is an incredibly ugly web page still. I just want to show you some of the different things that we can do. And I encourage you to have a look online and see what else you can do to format your text. What I hope that this example has helped you to appreciate is how the concerns of structure and presentation can be treated separately. So just as a recap, HTML of course is how this content was structured. The CSS at the top of the document had all the information about how it should be styled. What I want to do now is make that separation even clearer by moving the CSS into an external style sheet. To do this, I'm first going to copy the CSS rules we wrote together, and then I'm going to delete the style tag as it's no longer needed. Next, I'm adding a link element to specify that this page should be styled according to an external style sheet called main.css, located in the same directory. Finally, we just need to create a new file, paste the CSS rules into it, and save it as main.css in the same directory. And that's it. Of course, we externalize the same CSS rules so the page looks exactly the same, but we can very easily switch it to a different external style sheet and see that the presentation changes completely. Main2.css is one that I prepared earlier, for example. And with that, we've reached the end of this first video. So at this point, you should be able to explain what CSS is used for, how it separates the concern of presentation. You should be able to identify selectors, properties, values. You should be able to style HTML elements. And finally, you should be able to use internal and external style sheets. See you next time.